This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Past podcast. This is episode 51, the movie review of The Magnificent Seven. We'll also be discussing the Jack Reacher Never Go Back trailer. I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot, Ian Jones.
Oh, it's been too long, buddy.
It has, man.
Too long. This feels like going back to school. We did our 50th episode.
Yep.
And then, this little lull because Hollywood sucks it and they can't space out their movies.
No, they can't.
I feel like we would have easily gotten 4 more in.
Oh, yeah.
Had they just not stacked movies together to where we couldn't go and see them all over the summer.
Yep. It's pretty crazy, man. It's amazing when you're away from recording for a while, you start craving it just a little bit.
Yes, and I miss your face. I feel like I've been trying to find, black things I can hug, like really dark pillowcases. Just come here.
You're being ridiculous.
Let me hold my best friend. It's been so long. I need this. Let me go, Ian. Stop saying that.
Oh man, you're crazy as hell. You know that.
I love you. All right. 51. Right. Here we go.
Yeah. All right.
5-1.
So our trailer for this week is the Jack Reacher Never Go Back trailer. So this trailer has been pretty interesting. It looks like it's going to be some more kick butt Tom Cruise stuff, huh?
Ah, yes.
Because he's really good at taking people out.
He hasn't really made a bad movie in a while.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like there are some movies that people haven't gone to.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're really good.
Yeah, they are. They're just fun, action movies.
The issue here with Jack Reacher is, when these novels came out featuring this character, everyone sort of unanimously said, well, this gets turned into a movie, it's got to be Liam Neeson. That's the guy. It's got to be Liam Neeson.
He's typecasted now.
Well, yeah, but or someone like that. Jack Reacher is a huge, imposing figure.
Okay.
And he's supposed to be able to really dish out a beating. And everything is right about their depiction, with the exception of having Tom Cruise,
who is a fairly small guy. Yeah.
And they also film him as being really small too.
Yes.
But the first movie, that aside, because there were so many people who I talked to who read the books, who didn't even give the first movie a chance. The first movie follows one of the books, and it's really well done. So I think if you can get past the moniker, it's a bit of a shame, because this is one of those characters that they could turn into a Jack Ryan, or they could turn into a Jason Bourne. Now, Jack Ryan has had a sketchier transition to film. No one's been able to really do him.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of different people who's played Jack Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that will always be the case. And I'm sure there will always be Jason Bournes, just like James Bond and Iron Man and Wolverine. Yeah. There are going to be certain characters that will always have these movies made after them. And I think Jack Reacher, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent, could be one of those guys, but I'm not... The first movie was pretty good. I'm just not sure they have the right guy playing this part.
Oh, okay. So you actually are concerned about Tom Cruise playing him?
Well, I think I think his acting is fine, and I think the character is there, but there's something that's amiss. He's more of a physical presence more than anything else, and so I
guess that has a lot to do with it sounds to me like the way that the books are written, that's an ongoing thing and how imposing he is.
Yes.
And so people are expecting that when they go see this movie, and then you have Tom Cruise, who is not an imposing guy at all.
No.
Although he's been like an action star.
And he has
something years.
Yeah. And he does have the pedigree. And I think he did a good job. So I guess I'm a little bit on the fence just because I feel like the same people who need to be supporting this movie, and the sequel could be garbage. I had a tough time telling from the trailer, but the first one was really good, and it should still be out on Netflix.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch. I'll try to give it a watch before we rate this one, so I can get just at least an idea from the first one, because I haven't seen the first one yet.
Yeah, it gives you an idea how this character operates.
Yeah, all right.
So.
You got anything else to say about this?
That's it. That's all I got for Reacher 2.
All right. The only other thing I have is it seems like they added a lady friend here. Is she like a big character or something? Or?
I do not know. I would have to go in and read all of the books. But
okay. I wonder if it's like, I'm curious whether this actually follows one of the other books, or is it just like maybe they've gone on their own, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending.
Yeah, yeah, and they didn't really follow along with Jason Bourne on any of the movies, with the exception that kind of felt like this last one.
Yeah,
they got a little, although it was a different character, the female they introduced. The way that she acted was almost a little bit closer to Marie. How Marie maybe should have been.
Oh, okay.
To where she was more of an intelligence asset.
Okay.
So I mean, there's precedent for Hollywood just, and they do this all the time. They just will take an idea, and loosely use the same structure and run in a different direction.
Yeah,
they'll format it more for a general audience.
Yes, it's like you said, is very common.
Yeah.
All right, so if you got nothing else, then let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we're going to go ahead and get into the Magnificent Seven.
All right, pronunciation time. I'm a jerk. I know.
Oh, that's terrible. A mining town enlists the help of a bunch of gunslingers after a corrupt industrialist takes over their home.
Humana, stop. That was way too easy of a read. Well, you never had one that short.
I know.
Damn
lately,
you.
I've been having some really tough reads.
That's lazy as shit right there. All right. I guess that's all there is to it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Blurb. Not even coming close to using the character,
nope.
that 143 character count on Twitter.
Oh, that's fantastic. This movie's directed by Antoine Fuqua, who has also done Training Day, King Arthur, and The Equalizer. And he has used, there's a lot of these actors where he's worked with them before in this movie. It's pretty crazy. So it makes a lot of sense why some of these guys are chosen. This movie starring Denzel Washington as Chisholm, who, it's Denzel Washington. If you don't know
Denzel Washington,
if you don't know who he is, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, but he was in Crimson Tide, The Bone Collector, and Deja Vu.
You could have picked some more obscure stuff there, my friend.
Oh, I could have. I get what you mean.
Like
those
Virtuosity.
I almost chose Virtuosity. I almost chose Virtuosity.
Well, you should
have. Chris Pratt as Josh Faraday. And God, man, I remember when we started this podcast, Chris Pratt was just now starting to kind of blow up.
Yeah,
and
and he had been cast in some big stuff, and so we knew that this was going to happen.
Yep, and he's starting to show up in a lot of stuff, and he's got that new Passengers movie that's coming out soon. He was in the Lego Movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Jurassic World.
Wow. Wow, and wow. All in the same year.
Yeah. He's
that
pretty
is some
awesome.
Star power.
Pretty dang awesome. Ethan Hawke is Goodnight Robichaux. He's in Alive, Gattaca, and Lords of War. Do you know what's really weird about Ethan Hawke? Ethan Hawke, for me, like when I saw this movie, I still have this opinion of Ethan Hawke that it's like he still looks like the 90s version of Ethan Hawke where he's a young man. And he looks old as shit in this movie.
He does look old as shit. Yes, you're right. He does look old as shit. That's interesting.
Because the whole time it was like shocking when I saw him. I'm like, gee.
Yeah, I don't think they had to bother with makeup really because of the kind of character that he was playing. But I mean, I've always struggled with him. Like, to me, he's always been the poor man's Tom Cruise. But the guy has an Academy Award, and he could just make snow dogs with Cuba for the rest of his career.
Oh, it's terrible.
But I really like this character, so I'll get into that later.
We'll get into it later. Vincent D'Onofrio as Jack Horn. He was in Full Metal Jacket, Men in Black, and of course he was in the Daredevil Netflix series.
Okay, Vincent continues to mystify me. I'll get into that though. That's a much larger discussion.
All right, okay.
It's baffling.
Byung-Hun Lee as Billy Rocks. He was in The Good, the Bad, the Weird, G.I. Joe as Storm Shadow, and of course Terminator Genesis.
All right, that's where I recognize him from.
Yeah, he's
those
actually
awesome
been in a lot of
G.I. Joe
stuff.
movies.
Yes. He's done a lot of just Korean movies too, like Korean action movies. He's awesome. He's really great to see him actually, take a movie and run with it. He's pretty fun to watch as like an action star. Manuel Garcia Rulfo as Vasquez. He was in Bless Me Ultima, Cake, and From Dusk Till Dawn TV series. Now, I have not heard of this guy before. And every time I look at him, he definitely looks like he belongs in a telenovela, right?
Like throwing someone down a flight of stairs, you mean? Or like running off with the rancher's daughter.
Yeah, right? You kind of get that feeling from him pretty much the whole time.
We're not trying to stereotype anyone. He could have that sort of telenovela villain feel.
Right? It's kind of crazy. It's pretty interesting with him. Martin Sensmeyer as Red Harvest. He was in Westworld and pretty much this movie, so this is like all he's done.
What's weird is he looks so damn familiar, and his IMDb, like, he's brand new on the scene, so I don't know who I would be getting him confused with.
I wouldn't know either.
I was racking my brain the entire time trying to figure out what I saw him in, and it's nothing. I've seen him in nothing.
Yeah, so, right? I did the same thing when I was looking at him, because again, I haven't seen or heard.
The name even sounds familiar, but
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Haley Bennett as Emma Cullen. She was in The Haunting of Molly Hartley, Marley and Me, and she was in that Hardcore Henry movie.
Oh, she was in that movie. Yeah, yes. She played the bombshell.
Yep, that's exactly the reason why I remember her.
I kind of wonder if she's going to get any nods for like award season or not. I really liked her in this.
Yeah, she was really good in this.
But I mean, I think she's kind of the only one working her ass off, and we can get into that in a little bit.
That's Peter Sarsgaard as Bartholomew Bogue. He was in The Man in the Iron Mask, Flight Plan, and Green Lantern, and that's all I have for the characters.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah, I know your opinion of Peter Sarsgaard.
Okay, right. I actually have something to say about him that isn't completely negative. So
all right. So
we'll get into that.
Okay, so let's take another quick break, and then we'll get into the quirks and lights so we can really get into this movie.
I'm not going to complain about him the entire time. But
all right, Jones, now we're back for our quirks and likes section, so let's go ahead and get into my quirks.
All right.
One of the first quirks I have about this movie is the character Bartholomew Bogue.
Oh, okay.
His character, he is barely in the movie at all. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good or a bad thing with this guy. But I kept getting this feeling like I expected a little more from this character, mainly because everybody's so terrified of him, but it doesn't quite... There's not a lot that shows that he's really all that imposing. You can tell that he's definitely evil because he just offs a bunch of people, including Matt Bomer, who you didn't even know was going to be in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
But he gets like killed right at the beginning of the movie. So it's like that's the only thing that you like get from him, and you really don't get much else from him.
I mean, you're kind of hitting on a couple of things that I had that were quirks.
All right.
I think overall, there really wasn't much plot development. There's the first scene where he comes in and basically says, I'm taking your land, and this is it. And they set fire to the church.
Yep.
And when Matt Bomer, is it Bomer or Boomer?
Bomer.
When Matt Bomer stands up to him, he gets gunned down along with a lot of other people who weren't even necessarily going to reach for their weapons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a massacre, and you're right. The rest of the movie is really setting up all these, so-called heroes coming together.
Yes.
And planning to face an army.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the issues I had was really that there just wasn't character development from Chisholm or Bogue, because these two have a history, and it just sort of gets hinted at, and then at the very end it comes into focus.
Yes, it does.
And I felt like if the information came out in a different way, if it was a little bit more of a mystery, if Bogue was sort of a suspect in his sister's death, maybe it could have come out through the course of the fight.
Yeah, or through the course of the movie.
Through the course of the movie, because there really isn't any mystery. There's just not a lot said. Yeah,
you just know that clearly Bogue and him have some sort of history, because when Emma Cullen asks for help, he's like uninterested until Bogue's name is mentioned. So you can see that he has a chance to at least get involved with this character, and probably in a negative way, obviously. Yeah. The only other thing that's mentioned is obviously the Ethan Hawke's character, what's his name?
Goodnight Robuchet.
Yeah. Goodnight. He also, there's that scene where he asks him, like, let's make sure we're fighting the battle in front of us and not behind us, kind of thing. And so there's that extra little scene in there also, but there's nothing else to really build into that and kind of go into the detail about it. I mean, even just like one of the really cheap, cheesy ways that you can do this is if Chisholm was like having some issues, like, I don't know, having trouble sleeping because, his family or whatever, just something else to kind of give you a little more with the character. I don't know if that's necessarily needed, but it would be interesting to get more from these characters in that way.
All right.
You said you had another point?
Oh, well, yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of, there are kind of two things in there. I think that since Chisholm's the main character, we need to know more about him. And you just made a good point about Bogue, but Chisholm to me doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy to bury a grudge. So once you see him in action, it doesn't make any sense to me that he's never gone after Bogue.
Yeah.
If he was this certain about it. So I would say the one thing about this movie is that, it is an action movie and it's light on plot.
Yes.
They bring in some character stuff, but do they do enough story-wise to really take care of everything. It's like a couple of the guys owe Chisholm and join his group, but a handful of the other ones don't.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why they're fighting exactly.
Yeah, there's definitely a bunch of issues with that kind of stuff happening throughout this movie, and it's kind of disappointing because the thing is when you watch like the original one and you watch Seven Samurai, they give you more of these characters so that you can kind of get a better idea of their past and how they're related. The way this movie decides to do it is the characters are not the same. They're like, they touch on certain characters and from the original, like the Magnificent Seven, and then they try to throw some of those aspects into these other characters, and then they have totally new characters that aren't a thing. And so
gotcha.
That's one of my kind of quirks and my likes about the movie, because the quirks is you don't really get enough with the characters, but this movie does try to stand on its own by having different types of characters than the other ones have had.
Which I like, by the way, you know, and I mentioned this in Ghostbusters. If you're going to do a total reboot, then have it stand on its own. I don't want nods to the original or cameos, and you know, no one's alive to do a cameo anyway. But
no, not for this one.
But yeah, so I mean, I figured there was probably some new stuff, and I'll get into it, especially with some of the Native American characters, and so we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, my last quirk here, and I'll hand off the rest to you, is kind of touching along with that. One of my issues, which is probably one of the problems touching on with these characters, is that the Comanche guy, who I think is actually just kind of a cool character, but he kind of just joins them out of nowhere.
Yes.
It's like it's very strange, where he's just like, they do the whole eating the liver, I guess is what it is. And apparently after that, he's just like, oh, okay, I want a part of this. And just goes with him. Which seems just kind of weird. He has no stake in this at all. There's no reason why he's there. And I feel like that's one of my biggest issues. Out of all the characters, he's the one I have the biggest problem with. Because there's just nothing for him. There's no reason for him to be there. He's not there for money. They didn't acknowledge that he's there because he's a warrior and he wants a part of the battle, which would have been nice. And then they could even have had him, because towards the end of the movie, he takes out that other Native American guy. Maybe if he knew about that guy before, it would make more sense that he would want to join this group to try to take that guy out, because he's like a traitor.
He had an axe to grind.
Because he had an axe to grind, and that would have made more sense. But that's just not how it's done.
There could have been a point where all of that got too confusing.
Yeah.
To follow with 7 characters. You know, like I really liked what they did in the Ocean's 11 remake, because they brought everyone together under, you know, one premise, and no one was really like trying to take over the group, but they were all there to do a specific job. But I don't know that it translates in the same way here, because there just wasn't, you know, with the exception of some sort of code, which I don't think these guys really had.
No.
And if they do have some sort of moral standard, it just isn't coming across. Just from the kind of characters they are anyway.
Yeah, because they're all kind of just jerks.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, they're the kind of guys you need to go to take on Bogue. I think the simplest way to tie the 7 in is you have this jackass Bogue who has screwed someone over, you know, who has screwed a lot of people over.
Yeah.
And so why isn't that the connection for the 7?
I don't know. It definitely has little issues like that throughout this movie because of plot problems, and that's my biggest issues with the movie. So what are your quirks?
Well, so a little one, and that's no one really has an accent.
No.
The performances I think are really solid, and that's because of the casting.
Yes, the cast is great.
But I mean, it almost feels like one of those things where they just said F it, and if someone showed up with an accent, they showed up with an accent.
Yes.
And that's where that one actress who played Emma Cullen, I think, was working her ass off because because she by far has like the biggest accent and is in the toughest emotionally. She's in the toughest spot.
Yeah, she is
without getting a whole lot of screen time.
Yeah.
I'd say, but it definitely had this, let's put on cowboy stuff and play in the sand.
Yes.
Kind of attitude, which I think I'm fine with in an action movie. I mean, I would describe this as an action movie.
It's just the thing about it is there's something that like a critic once said about British actors and American actors, and it's like he said something like British actors like playing gangsters or villains as much as American actors like to play cowboys. But you don't quite get that in this movie. You know what I mean? Like you want a little more like just more cowboy type attitude from these guys, but they're really just kind of just their own thing. And that's just how it is. So it's just kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's like they were developed in some other movie.
Yeah, right.
And then they met up here to die.
that is the best way to describe it, I think. All right.
Okay, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yes.
He continues to mystify me.
Why is that? Okay,
so he kind of won me back over with his Kingpin portrayal in Daredevil. Yes. But he makes these really odd character decisions when he acts. And sometimes he does things and he doesn't, and there's no explanation at all as to why he's doing them. Like why this guy appears to be deaf and he isn't, why he's talking the way that he is. And
I don't know if he ever thought he was deaf, but he definitely...
Well, I mean, that's almost what it seems like. But I mean, this guy comes in and he's completely acting different from everyone else.
Yeah,
and he has this issue. And in particular, he refuses to make eye contact with other actors. And it really bothers me. He's working in a movie with Denzel freaking Washington, one of the biggest movie stars ever of all like period. There will be movies forever, and Denzel will be up there in the top. Assuming that he doesn't die freakishly, he's going to continue to make awesome movies. The guy never ages. He never ages. I haven't seen him age in 30 years. I swear he still looks the same. He is going to make whatever movie he wants.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, he will.
You have to look at Denzel Washington. How can you not when you're talking to him? I just was like holding my forehead. I was just buried in my forehead. Like, what are you doing, man?
The thing that's so interesting about that is like immediately when his character comes on screen, I like immediately had a problem with Jack Horner. And the thing about it is like to me it's an inconsistency problem. So it's like he's definitely a very odd character, and the voice kind of bothered me but grew on me as it went over as the movie went through. But like it's such a weird thing because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why is he like this? And I want to know more about his history and why he's like that. And why is he like super religious but doing the most bloodiest stuff in the movie? Or he's just like killing everybody in very violent ways because he just like doesn't have a gun. He's just like whatever about it.
Yeah, and he's known for collecting scalps and
scalps. And so it's another problem with this movie where it's like, I want more info for some of these characters, but I don't know how you do that. It's really difficult to do that with this many characters, yet we've seen other movies do that. So it's I'm not sure what needed to happen with this movie to get it more like those, because we've definitely seen several movies where these big, including the original version of this one, where they do a good job of like introducing all these characters and having some sort of connection between all of them. So it's such a weird thing, I think.
I don't understand Faraday's death wish. I had a real problem with this because it kind of seemed like early on that Chris Pratt's character was going to do a swan dive at some point just because of how things were going, and you figure that in a movie like this, most of the guys needed to die. Against these odds. Yeah, so I didn't have an issue with that. There
is how the original one is too. Like, not all these, because of the odds, everybody can't survive.
Yes, because of the odds, everyone can't survive. It's just the nature
of how it is.
And they have that scene where everyone knows this could be it, and even one of them leaves and walks away. Yeah. But like charging the Gatling gun at the end really drove me nuts. I really felt like there needed to be some other way of handling it. I didn't have an issue with the magic trick. Yeah. But it just seemed like there's no way, like they've gone through everything to have like this almost cartoon ending for this character. Really pissed me off. I just was hoping for something more clever. And obviously they did all this planning, and there was a big something they didn't plan for.
I got what got. Yeah. And I think the thing is I think what's missing is, like, one of the reasons why, it's like you said earlier, one of the reasons why the original Magnificent Seven and the reason why Seven Samurai worked is because there is a code that they all live by. And that's what brings them all together. So if they had some sort of code, some sort of moral code, it would make more sense that he would be willing to sacrifice himself. Instead, you kind of feel like he just has a death wish, like you were saying. Like he just wanted to die, almost. So I definitely get what you mean there.
And I mean, there could have been anything, but they could have suggested that he had consumption or something else. It's just, it's weird when it's a young guy who so clearly doesn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't
to
get
just
much
not explain
more.
That.
Yeah, and again, it's the same issue. It's like you have all these characters that you need a little more info on them to figure everything out.
I think my last thing, which you touched on briefly, and I meant to get into further, is the use of Matt Bomer here.
Yeah.
My fondness for him goes back to the TV show Chuck, and he played an incredible character on that show named Bryce Larkin.
Yes.
And Bryce got a real bum deal at the end, but they killed him off in order for Matt to go and do White Collar.
Yeah.
And, he was
Which is a pretty successful show.
Yes, it is really successful. He was really close to being Superman. It just seems like I keep seeing him die a lot in movies, and he's a really good actor. And maybe in one of these, in a flick like this with all this star power, it makes sense to use him, early on and sacrifice him. But I think it would have been cooler to see him in one of the other roles. As one of the seven. I don't know how that would have worked, but
I don't know.
It just, I would like to see more of him. It just seems like I keep seeing him die early in movies.
Yeah. Well, my only problem really is Matt Bomer in this movie is how they tried to rough him up and make him look like a cowboy, but he's still gorgeous.
He's still gorgeous. That's true. He's always going to look damn good.
He's always going to look good. He's a real pretty boy type, and it's just like you can't. They try to make him look all dirty and sweaty and like unshaved, but it doesn't fucking matter.
Doesn't matter when you get shot in the chest.
Yeah, right.
So. All right, that's it for me. Let's get to the likes.
Let's get to the likes. The first thing I want to say is just overall, I thought that this was just kind of a fun action movie, and I had a great time watching it. I thought it was really entertaining, and I just thought it was great, and I'm glad I went to go see it. I thought that it kept at least an inkling of the spirit of the original with the different types of characters, and it definitely had the same basic plot. But just having the extra characters I thought was just really good, and having different versions of characters I thought was really good, and I enjoyed that. The other thing I enjoyed was I thought that the pacing was actually really good in this movie. Like, I didn't seem very bored, and when they slowed down, that was where pretty much the only character development happened at all in the movie. But I thought what they had was, with the character development, was pretty decent. I did like seeing the scene with Goodnight and Chisholm where he's just like, let's make sure that we're fighting the battle in front of us and not behind us. And so you learn a little bit more about these two guys. And there was this relationship that they had, you know, like Union soldier type thing, and like and fighting for the Confederates type thing. And you have this extra little layer with him. And I thought that that was pretty good with that character. Along with that, I think the biggest advantage to this movie is all the characters are great. I actually like the characters. I wish I could have got more info from them, but the actual characters and the relationships I really liked. I really liked Chris Pratt's attitude. I love the whole like bromance you have between him and what the heck is that? The other cowboy. God, what is his name? Vasquez. Like, his whole relationship with Vasquez was just such a fun little part extra to the movie. And towards the end, they had grown to kind of like each other, and I thought that that was pretty good. I love the relationship between Billy Rocks and Goodnight. And it's just like, there's a lot of stuff like that. I even enjoyed Jack Horn as a character, even though he was very strange. But even just the way he dies is like appropriate for that character. Like, he's just weird, and he had this like really kind of awkward death. And so I enjoyed that too. And so it's like, I think like the characters were just really good. I just wanted more. I wanted more details on each character and learn more about them. And I wanted something to connect them better together, like we were saying earlier, like having some sort of code that they all were a part of, and that makes sense that they would go forward with this. But that's all my likes. So what do you got?
You'll get a kick out of this one.
Oh.
I like that all the white guys died in the end, and three minorities rode off into the sunset. Because you never see that.
I didn't even notice that.
I don't know how, but I was like really giggling to myself.
Oh my God, you're so right.
Graham's probably not even going to notice.
I didn't even know
that we saw movie history here.
That is fantastic. Oh, that's great. The movie just got a little bit better seconds ago.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I've got Peter Sarsgaard here under one of my likes.
No way. I can't
stand this guy.
No, you can't.
But I actually loved him in this movie. Because he's just the perfect amount of weasel. and I think then he just steps away and lets the movie take care of himself. And the fact that he has to show up because Chisholm called him a coward, I think, like, I love that Old West sensibility.
Right.
Like, that's all you have to do really to get someone to show up.
Yep.
Because he's not going to be called a coward, even though he is. And he hides behind an army of men and
a Gatling
gun.
Yes.
I thought it was really interesting that this is an Old West movie, and there are definitely racial tensions. Mm-hmm. Like when these guys walk into town, and you wonder if they're just going to get if certain characters are just going to get shot on sight or not.
Which is, going back to your other point. Sorry for interrupting. But
no, it's fine.
Now I wish Billy Rocks would have survived. That way we'd have got an extra minority, right?
Well, I think those two decided to go out together.
Yep, pretty much.
But I mean, I thought the movie, without maybe calling too much attention to it,
yes,
it really shattered some stereotypes. Like I thought that there was a lot of balance with certain characters here. And you mentioned the two Native American warriors.
Yes.
And they're both really intelligent guys. They're both battle hardened, but they're really very different.
Yes.
And how they go about doing something. And on one side you have the guy who like commands Bogue's forces, who definitely looks like he fought at the Alamo.
Yeah,
or something.
right?
Like he's got some serious military training.
Yeah.
And then you have the Comanche, the solo warrior who's like off on his own quest to find himself.
Yeah.
And I like the little references to things like the Alamo and things like
the Civil War
things like Mexico fighting for their because they had they had a really trained army, so I mean this would have been around the same time when all these guys are having to come together from different backgrounds, and they're all really deadly for different reasons. Yes. And so I kind of got a kick out of that. And I'll say something else. I almost thought from the trailer that it was pandering that they had some of these other characters in there. But once we got into the movie, I thought there was like a nice balance. Like I didn't think that anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just because you got a little glimpse of certain characters, and it's like, kind of reminded me of doing those videos, those corporate videos where they just try to get as many as many ethnicities into the same meeting, and it's just like it never works out this way.
No,
like I mean, not to be mean or anything, but it just doesn't. It's just all these guys are in different departments. It just doesn't work out this way. That a guy from IT is in with a meeting with marketing, and
it doesn't make any sense.
But whatever, put them together at the same table. I don't give a shit. Oh man. Thank God that Emma Cullen didn't kiss anyone, because had she kissed someone in this movie, I would have been really pissed off.
Yeah, the thing about her is she's another one of the characters I really like. She really stood on her own, and she kind of became one of the seven kind of feeling, It's like that's just kind of how she was in this movie, and I really enjoyed that aspect to her. It was kind of interesting that she took Goodnight's place and continued on. So she almost became one of the predominant characters in the movie, even though she didn't have a whole lot of screen time, which to me shows that all her scenes had a lot of weight to them.
Yeah, and it almost felt like she had a fight in this group of guys for every line.
Right.
And I think she did fine there. So I was just really glad that they didn't lose sight of the fact that she just lost her husband 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
Because that could have gone a different way, maybe.
Oh, it easily could have gone a different way.
The last,
you would have got The Last Samurai.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. All right. The last thing was I really like Goodnight. Such a classic Western character.
Yeah, he is.
And I love the fact that he's, haunted by his own ghosts, his own demons, that he was a sharpshooter. He probably should have died in war, but he came back and he made a lot of money.
Yep.
For his efforts, even though he was on the losing side. Yep. And I mean, those kind of guys usually, they don't know how to deal with being a living legend when they probably should have gone out like Stonewall or someone else, especially when you're on the losing side anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was, we don't get much of him, and he doesn't survive.
Yeah.
But I thought his character development, the little arc that they gave him was really complete. So he was my last like. And that's it, buddy. Let's rate this sucker.
All right, let's rate it. I'm going to say that I feel like this movie had some good pacing. I really enjoyed all the characters. I liked that they had all their own different, not only their different attitudes, but even their own different styles of fighting. And the movie's just fun, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to go ahead and say rent it. I almost see it on this one, but it's just like it's got a little bit of stuff that kind of bothers me. And so I'm going to just say rent it, but that's on the strong side of rent it.
Okay. I think that just for being, an action Western, this movie's really entertaining.
It is.
In a period when we have nothing to watch. I mean, nothing to watch.
Yeah.
In the movie theaters. So I'm going to say see it.
That is fair enough.
All right.
All right, let's sign out. So if anybody wants to contact us, we always have our home on the web, halfpastpodcast.com.
Like us on Facebook.
Rate us on iTunes, and we're on Google Play.
We're on Stitcher and Libsyn.
Email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com. Let us know you're listening.
How often do you chuck that?
Every day.
Tweet us at halfpastpodcast. Liar. Tweet us. Oh, next week has a bunch of question marks. Go ahead and do your thing while we figure this out.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Well, I guess our next movie is going to be Jack Reacher, Never Go Back.
Okay, all right. So yeah, when the hell is when is that Doctor Strange movie? Is that November?
Oh, that's November.
This is crazy.
I know.
Freaking Hollywood, man.
I know. I don't know what the deal is about this time period in Hollywood. They don't want to show anything. It's such a weird
and the crap that they come out with. We know from doing this for 2 years now that it isn't going to work for podcasts.
No.
It's just not going to give us the content we need to do 50 minutes.
So essentially we're going on another break, essentially, because it doesn't come out till I think the 21st of October.
I mean, the thing is, it is really, the summers are really back to back.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like the year starts sooner.
I think so, too.
Every time.
Yes.
But then, boy, does it peter out and slump at the end. It goes December, and then we're going to get something good in January or February, like a Maze Runner or...
Yep.
One of those kind of movies.
Oh, I can't wait to do a Maze Runner.
Yeah, man, last one coming out.
Special place in Half Past Podcast's heart, man.
Wouldn't that be great if that ended up being 75 or something like that?
Yep, so it's just so good. All right. I guess that's it. We'll see you in a month.
For episode 52. Yeah, we're racking them up now.
Episode 52.
I'm gonna limp there even if I have to drag you to 100.
This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.
Oh.
Oh, man.